The following program contains drug use. Good evening and welcome to Four Corners. Of all the modern epidemics of drug addiction, Australia's ice storm may well be the most pernicious, the most destructive of individual lives and families. There are more than 200,000 ice users in Australia and the numbers are growing. Demand for treatment has almost doubled in 4 years, way beyond the capacity of the public system. Despite the crippling costs of private treatment, desperate families of ice users are turning to unregulated clinics. A stint in private rehab can cost $30,000 and families are going to extraordinary lengths to raise the cash. Some clinics are effective, but the demand has created a lucrative new business model. Last week, a Supreme Court judge in Victoria described the private drug rehab industry as parasitical, taking money without being able to demonstrate results. Reporter Ben Knight examines the rehab industry that's become the last hope for many families.
In a quiet street on the far outskirts of Melbourne, a family crisis is unfolding. Wayne and Renee Butters are worried. They might have to sell the house.
We built it as a family. It took me 2 years, but there's good times here. I don't want to tip it all away.
They need to find $30,000 to get their teenage daughter into a private drug rehab clinic. And they need to get her in today.
You can't get into a public facility?
No, not an option. No beds anywhere.
They say, look, we've got something, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 3 months. That's no good to you?
No, not for an ice addict. No way.
It's hard for them to admit they want help. So while she's wanting help, we need to get her in somewhere before she does relapse and then doesn't want the help again.
And that could happen
within a day.
Wayne and Renee have no idea where to look. But Jane Stone does.
Hello.
She's helped dozens of families here in the Victorian town of Bacchus Marsh to navigate the rehab system.
Carlo, it's Jane from Bacchus Marsh. How you going? Yeah, good.
She's found a private rehab that will do it for half price, $15,000. That's if the family can come up with $5,000 today.
When could the next payment be made after the first $5,000? They need a definite date.
We'll have it by next week. We'll keep ringing.
They'll be able to make another payment by the end of Thursday next week. Okay, thanks, Carly. Bye. He wants the money up front, basically. But
Renee was made redundant last year, and she's still recovering from skin cancer surgery.
Start selling some things to pay our friends back now.
Yeah.
So something will probably go up for sale tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like what?
A car.
It's got to go. G'day, mate. How you going? I was just ringing, obviously, if I could speak to you about borrowing a couple of thousand off you for a week or so. Just obviously help with the treatment and I can pay it back to you.
It's been 8 months of hell. Wayne had to stop work to search for his daughter Tiani after she disappeared on a drug binge.
I've knocked on every door, I've been to police, I've been everywhere, I've chased my daughter for 6 months from house to house to house. Now she's locked in a house in Bacchus Marsh for the last 2 months. I've gone there flat out to that house, mate. I turned the water off, I turned the gas off, I pinched their power fuse, I smashed their windows. I've had enough.
Jane calls Tiani, tell her they've found a rehab.
So you need to come home tonight, yeah, and get some things packed and ready to go. Okay, no worries, doll. See you then. Bye. Bye. She's excited. She's happy.
Hello. How are you?
Good.
Thank you so much.
So you're willing to go?
Yeah, I'm really happy to go.
You're happy to go?
Yeah, I'm ready and I'm happy.
Love you, mate. That's why we did it.
Yeah.
Huh?
Sorry, I'm ready for it. I just been waiting for it so long.
You could good for you. Get back to your normal self, you know.
Why are you so happy? Because I can get my life back on track and be the girl I used to be so happy.
That's the girl we want back.
Good to have you back.
I'm going and I'm sticking it out. Thank you, Dad.
Love you.
Later, as Tiani packs her bags, Renee transfers the money.
5,000 out. I have $139 left. Wow.
They look like any other family on a normal Saturday night. But it's a world away from the life Tiani was living.
Every day, every night. It was like a party. Drugs were always there. There was always someone there. Up to like 10 people at the one house. All the lights are on at like 4 o'clock in the morning. Everyone's having a great time. And the police used to always go past, always knocking on the door. And I used to shit myself thinking I'm in trouble because before I started drugs, I never had a record.
4 weeks ago, the party came to a terrifying end.
I was at a house not long ago, and while I was there, I was using, and I got shot up. So there was 5 bullets through the front window, and I've shit myself, and that was when I straight away rang Mum I'm coming home, I'm done with it. Like, that's what made me switch on straight away, that this is enough. Like, I could have got shot right there and then, like, it's ridiculous.
It's the next morning and the final preparations are being made. Jane will drive Tiani to the clinic once she's had an assessment over the phone.
How are you feeling today?
I feel a bit emotional. I do, because, you know, I've worked with another young girl a couple of years ago here in the detox facility, and unfortunately there wasn't a bed for her when she left the detox unit. And unfortunately she was murdered, and she didn't have this opportunity that Tiani has today.
Finally, it's time to go.
I miss you heaps. I'll be up in 2 weeks.
She's sitting here with Sarah's card in her hand.
Oh, okay, that's great.
On the way, there's a phone call for Tiani.
Hi, sweetie. I'm glad that you've been given this wonderful opportunity to turn your life around.
It's Noelle Dixon, who also lives in Bacchus Marsh.
Look at this card and just remember what...
It was her daughter Sarah who was murdered nearly 4 years ago when she couldn't get into rehab.
Every day, think as you wake up. Today, I am fortunate to be alive. I have a precious human life, and I'm not going to waste it.
Thank you
and
so
if
much.
you ever need to have another chat, just let Janie know, and I'll be there for you, okay?
Thank you.
Sarah had nowhere to go, and there was nothing for us. And, you know, it's just tragic to think that this happens, and it's happening all the time, you know, with young people, and, you know, they go back to their toxic friends, and this is where things go horribly wrong.
Sarah Kafiki relapsed and was murdered by another drug user.
Do you think if she had have found a rehab place somewhere that it could have been prevented?
All she wanted was to get clean and to stay clean and get on with her life and to study law and be a lawyer. And, you know, if she had that opportunity, I'm sure that she'd be still there studying now. Most families don't have $30,000 sitting in their bank account just to, you know, put their child into a rehab centre. It's just not feasible. And the government should be doing more to help with these young people that want to get clean.
Around Australia, there are more than 1,500 publicly funded drug and alcohol rehab beds. But each year, agencies are dealing with more than 32,000 requests for treatment from people like Tiani. And that's just for ICE. The system can't keep up. But for those willing to pay, private rehabs like Riverside offer immediate help. This is where Tiani will spend the next 3 months, if she sticks it out.
Okay, so this is our reception area.
How long have you been in here?
Since January.
The Riverside Clinic is run by Carlo Lamarquezina.
So everyone gets, what, a room to themselves?
Room to themselves, yeah.
He's a former heroin addict who's been working in private rehabs for the past 5 years. Now he's a part owner of Riverside.
The building itself already had...
This is one of a new crop of private rehabs that are springing up across Australia.
Yeah, these are just a typical room with an ensuite, which we've decked out with the very, very simple sort of basic needs. As you can see, it's a little bit messy, but that's just how it is.
This is what you get for almost $30,000.
An environment like this is really about ongoing stimuli. So we've got 7 o'clock start, you've got people getting up, getting ready to go on a river walk. So there's this ongoing program from 7 till 11 at night, okay? There's some breaks in between, there's some downtime, there's dinner, there's always something going on.
You keep them busy?
Absolutely.
It was Carlo who offered Tiani's family the discount on her treatment.
So why is it that you thought that Tiani's family was a good case for discount?
I could sense the sincerity in her worker. Her worker sounded quite desperate and that she needed help. And if our other 2 beds, our charity beds were available, then she would have got that bed. As you could imagine, there's a queue for those beds.
So why do we have this situation where we have these private clinics like yours springing up?
Well, I guess it's a supply and demand situation, really, and the demand at the moment is that people are seeking treatment and there isn't enough supply available. And so, obviously the market's opened up for people to access whatever means they can in order to seek treatment.
Riverside's co-founder is Peter Metropolis, a former Melbourne nightclub owner who was convicted of cocaine trafficking 2 years ago.
Look, Peter doesn't have any actually hands-on experience with the clinic. Okay, he was the founder, he found the place, he put it together, and he was under my guidance, and that's as far as it goes with Peter.
Is he the right person to be running a drug rehab?
I would 100% vouch for Peter or anyone else with the same history, and he's more than suitable because he has his own current experience in recovery.
So this is his redemption project, is it?
Well, you could call it that. You could call it that. He certainly is very committed to seeing this thing up and running, and it certainly isn't about the money. He loves seeing that the people are walking out of here very, very satisfied and content and getting on with their lives.
Carlo Lamarquezina says all staff at Riverside have formal drug and alcohol qualifications. But there are no regulations, state or federal, that require them at private clinics like this.
The industry definitely, 100% needs regulations. There are way too many rogue cowboy operators in this field that can and will take advantage of people paying the money.
Are you one of them?
No, definitely not.
Private rehabs like Riverside call themselves clinics, but they operate outside the health system and outside its rules.
I could start a rehab up tomorrow and hire staff who aren't suitably qualified and call it a rehab and charge top dollar with no questions asked. And I think that's the very point here, is there needs to be some sort of review on the organisations that aren't aligned with health providers, health fund providers, to become accountable.
People often feel that if they pay for treatment, that means they're going to get something that's a lot better than what's offered in the public system. What's worrying is when, investing that money, there's no guarantee that that system is any better than what is offered in the public system, and often, I would say, is often worse than what is offered in the public system.
Professor Dan Lubman is one of Australia's most eminent addiction experts.
Unfortunately, we're in a system where there is no minimum standards in this field. So anyone could be setting up and putting a sign on the doors, calling themselves, a service, and and that's a big concern for the community.
There is an answer to the nightmare of addiction.
Last year, Victoria's Consumer Affairs Department took rare action against a private rehab clinic. The Get Off Drugs Naturally facility on the outskirts of Melbourne.
The mental effects of coming off drugs.
It runs the Narconon program, developed by Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard.
The Narconon program is a precise, step-by-step regimen.
It describes itself as a not-for-profit charity, but charges around $30,000 for treatment that includes extensive daily sauna sessions and high doses of vitamins. Consumer Affairs Victoria acted when the clinic couldn't produce evidence to back its claim of a 70% success rate.
If we had a clinic set up that would making that claim about treating cancer, there'd be some sort of national inquiry, wouldn't there? And I think the fact that this happens in the area of addiction and nobody says anything, or nobody does anything, I think it really just exemplifies sort of the way in which people see the area and the way in which people are disinterested.
There have been at least 6 civil cases lodged against the Get Off Drugs Naturally clinic in Australia. One family that took action told Four Corners that their son left the clinic because he was forced to read Scientology books and that he didn't get the one-on-one counselling they'd been promised. In the settlement, they were refunded the $28,000 they'd spent on his treatment. The clinic declined an interview with Four Corners.
The danger here is if people are offering legitimate treatments or claiming to offer legitimate treatments that are not based on evidence, that aren't supported by the literature, aren't covered by appropriate clinical quality and governance standards. If that is being offered, then that's a real issue and that really needs to be exposed.
The National ICE Task Force estimates that more than 200,000 Australians use crystal methamphetamine. As a proportion of the population, that makes Australians some of the biggest ice users in the world. Lucky Diamond Rich was one of them. He's the world's most tattooed man.
I could have a real black box.
Lucky used to hide his supply of ice all over Footscray in Melbourne's inner west.
And I just put it right up there, stash it and go.
So how many did you have around the place?
I'd have a couple of stash spots. So literally because I was being manipulated a lot by the voices that were in my head on ice.
He spent days on end on this rooftop in a state of ice psychosis.
So how often were you hearing the voices?
All the time. Yeah, constantly.
Like having conversations?
Yep. At one point, I would be talking out aloud to the voices, like I am now to you. Yeah.
Can you remember how it felt? Can you remember what your brain was doing?
Yeah. I was high. I felt invincible.
What does that mean?
It means that I felt like euphoric. I felt like invincible. Like seriously, there were cars. I chased cars. Because I thought that there was people in those cars that were chasing me.
Well, you must have freaked the hell out of them.
Yeah, I did.
So you'd just be walking around in a psychosis?
Yeah, just in a constant psychosis, yeah.
Lucky once travelled the world as a street and circus performer.
Wow, what a great audience!
But ice brought him crashing down.
I look visually full on. So I never ever thought that my internal world would be that full on, and ice took me there. To have that realisation that that's where I was, that I was as crazy as I look, within my psychosis, within the using, that really scared me, and fortunately I was able to turn that around.
Lucky has now been clean for more than 100 days.
I think I was the odd one out.
He did it here.
I don't really want to get big or anything.
Quinn House is a non-profit rehab clinic in the inner Melbourne suburb of Collingwood for homeless and disadvantaged men.
Quinn House saved my life twice. I can't afford to go to a private rehab. I've never been to a private rehab, so to have those options available, it's been a bit of a saving grace, you know.
So you can go for the whole...
Quinn House has 11 of just 240 publicly funded rehab beds in Victoria.
Did you look into private rehab?
Looked into it, very dear. Yeah, too dear. My mum, I don't have the money, and yeah, Mum couldn't really afford it. Yeah.
That just wasn't an option?
Nah, very lucky to get in here. Yeah.
Hayden has 2 young children. This is his second crack at getting clean here.
Done a month and a half in January to March, then relapsed, had a drink, got kicked out, and now I'm back in, been in for another month and a half.
You going to relapse again?
No, definitely not. I love my children, I need to be there for them, you know, I want to watch them grow and, yeah.
If you are confused or unsure...
Just like the private rehabs, Quinn House offers a 3-month program, including group therapy and counselling.
When you walk out of here, if you're not clear about what your values are and your goals are a bit wishy-washy, you will lapse. This is the stuff that helps you maintain abstinence and keeps you on the recovery pathway.
But while private clinics can charge more than $2,500 a week, Quinn House's budget for each client is around a third of that.
You are going to stick to your goal.
So when you see the amounts of money that are being paid to private rehab clinics, what do you think?
It's envy, the amount of money they have. Look, all I'd say from our perspective is we can run a really effective residential facility that supports people in their recovery and really supports them in maintaining their recovery long term for not a lot of money. And, you know, it works. What we do here works.
So what is a lot once a month?
But Quinn House is only open to disadvantaged men.
I thought about that yesterday. Can we go see...
Yeah, we get family members who are desperate to get their loved ones in treatment. I've taken phone calls from parents who are trying to get their child into Quinn House and, you know, they offer money, they offer, you know, they're willing to pay, which we're a, you know, not-for-profit, non-government organisation, so we don't take money for services.
Private rehabs do take money. Sometimes money that families don't have.
You've given me some detail already about your financial situation. I know that you've got some outstanding debts.
Gary Rothman is a financial counsellor at the non-profit rehab clinic Odyssey House. He sees a lot of clients who've already spent their superannuation nest egg to pay for treatment.
15K borrowed. Most of the people I see who have come through private rehabs have had their superannuation emptied. It's sort of a soft target, and all of them would be saying to me that they weren't referred to anyone for financial advice on it, and there's been no discussion about what insurance they might have had for income protection.
So in some cases they may not have had to simply sign over their super?
That's correct. In some cases people will have had income protection insurance, but that takes time. And of course people who are entering treatment and people who are trying to get them into treatment from the private sector are only interested in getting the lump sum and not in necessarily what's in the best interest of that client.
Zoe Shelley's family spent more than $50,000 putting her through a private rehab program.
Like, I'd be high on drugs, talking about wanting to get clean, and, you know, then I'd start withdrawing, and, like, you know, the whole, like, getting clean thing would sort of go out the window, and I'd just, you know, use drugs again, and then it just kept happening over and over. Ice, marijuana, alcohol, pills, GHB, like, whatever I could get my hands on. So I guess I kind of, like, came to a point where I need some help.
Zoe is now clean and sober, working in a cafe and studying to become a drug counsellor herself. She's proof the treatment works, but she's also one of the lucky ones. Studies show that only around 1 in 5 ice users will still be off the drug a year after treatment. Most will need more than one stint in rehab to get off ice for good. So this is what was presented to you. What is it?
It's a schedule of fees, essentially.
Zoe's parents remortgaged their house to raise more than $30,000 for 3 months of rehab, then 2 months of transitional housing at another $10,000 a month.
There's a lot of options about how you're going to pay for it. And, we presented with options such as, remortgaging your house, drawing on superannuation, and was even offered the opportunity for assistance in that process if that's what was required.
The Shelley family were dealing with one of the biggest and best-known private rehabs in the country, the Raymond Hayter Clinic.
Everybody that has relapsed.
Founded 18 years ago by former drug addict Richard Smith.
So what I did was I set up something where I refused to even let government be involved. So I was able to develop a program that actually worked.
He's built the clinic's profile through frequent media exposure and its own promotional videos.
And I think he is a visionary, and I think he has a unique understanding of the addict's mind.
The program doesn't offer a miracle cure. It's a mix of group activity, therapy and counselling. And every day, clients are put on a bus and taken to 12-step meetings like Narcotics Anonymous.
A retreat obviously has a ring to it in terms of relaxation, recovery, time out. It certainly has appeal to it. Going somewhere in the bush and, getting the very best drug and alcohol treatment is appealing. More so appealing than sitting in a cold community hall doing a 12-step fellowship. I think that often people would get the success that they require by simply attending these 12-step fellowships free of charge and get the same success rate.
Was it worth 30 grand?
I don't know about that.
Oh, you don't know if it's worth that or...?
Look, I think there's probably a pretty good profit margin there, but yeah, I don't know. I guess in saying that, you kind of can't put a price on someone's life.
But there are other charges here, so what are they? Zoe's father, Anthony, has no regrets about spending all that money.
It's a phenomenal amount of...
But he recalls the pressure he felt at the time.
Ultimately, it's pretty easy a pressure to apply.
While you were sitting there, what sorts of things are coming back at you across the table to get you across the line?
Oh, well, there's there was the analogy to, if this was a treatment for cancer, would you pay? Pretty emotive stuff. We knew we had a window there at that time that, she was willing, to a degree, but willing to move forward with treatment.
And you had to grab it?
Had to grab it.
What would have happened if you didn't?
Yeah, we probably wouldn't have a daughter today.
What parent's not going to go and say, yes, I'll sell my house, I'll give you my kidney to save my child's life? They'll do anything, and they know it, and they know the language to use. We also have pharmacotherapy options for you.
Joanna McDougall works in the drug and alcohol department at a major Melbourne public hospital network.
So the first process you need to go through is have an normal central intake and assessment.
She used to work for the Hayter Clinic, where she says she saw the hard sell in action on parents.
700 514. If you don't have the money, they have other strategies. As soon as you come to the interview, there is withdrawal of superannuation forms there. So the child or family member or husband, wife, etc., gets into treatment. That's when they start you'll need to access the super funds, you'll need to access a mortgage, or you'll need to make a personal loan, etc. I've heard them say, is there anyone you know that can lend you the money? Because they need to make sure that they sign something or they have some deposit before they leave, because they know they'll lose them if they have time to think about it.
Ashley turned to the Hayter Clinic when her husband fell into an ice psychosis.
I woke up a couple of times with him standing above the bed with an axe above me. He was hallucinating, seeing drones in the sky, chasing after imaginary people in the street with an axe and a knife in the middle of the night.
Waiting for a public rehab bed was not an option.
What sort of waiting lists were they telling you were facing?
The shortest was 3 months, the longest was 9 months for a rehab bed for a meth addict.
And what would 3 months have meant in this house?
Death, either me or him.
Ashley didn't have $30,000, so one of her husband's relatives offered to pay. But straight away, they were being billed for extra charges she says they were never told about.
There were charges like $18 for an alarm clock, which I found ridiculous. Charges constantly for the drug tests, for the drug screenings, for the medication, for doctor's visits, the psychiatric visits, things like that. It was just a constant amount of money.
But she was more concerned about her husband's state of mind.
It sort of goes downhill again.
During a family visit, Ashley sought advice from a member of staff.
Feeling very down, and I explained that his mental state is deteriorating and can I please have some advice on what to do? I need help with what to do here. Expecting that, I should have been given that advice and support. And instead he said to me, oh, well, let him walk out. Don't take him home. Put him on the street like the dog that he is.
The Hayter Clinic denies any such language was used. Ashley's husband walked out of the clinic the next day. He was soon using ice again and is now in jail.
So what do you think you got for the money?
Nothing, really. I got 55 days where someone else was dealing with him.
On its website, the Hayter Clinic cites a 74% success rate. But that figure is based on the clinic's own survey, which doesn't include clients who left the program early. Until a few weeks ago, the clinic also offered an explicit guarantee that clients who completed treatment would not relapse.
Well, I think what we know from the evidence is nobody can make that claim. If people are making those claims, obviously they're not credible.
There are never any guarantees that somebody is going to come into treatment and never use a substance of any type ever again. I think it's irresponsible to make those promises. I think it's responsible for us to speak to families about the reality of addiction, which they probably know already, which is that it can be chronic and it can be a relapsing condition, and that often it takes multiple attempts in various different programs to reach the goals that they're wanting to reach.
And presumably the people who are involved in those clinics would know that.
Yes, they would.
While this program was being prepared, the clinic removed that guarantee from its website, telling Four Corners that the use of the term guarantee was regrettable.
I thought, well, it has to be good because they've got all these professional people. It just sounded wonderful.
Within days of his arrival at the Hayter Clinic's Bacchus Marsh retreat in 2011, Brenda's son was found hanging from a tree by fellow clients. Brenda says a worker at the clinic did call her, but didn't tell her it was a suicide attempt.
She just told me that there'd been an incident because I thought they would take him to hospital because of his mood swings, maybe he was in a lot of pain, depression. I didn't know what to think.
She grew increasingly worried and decided to fly down from Queensland herself.
I knew he was so unhappy and I wanted to see what was happening because at that stage, I think we'd paid, it was nearly up to $30,000 and he'd only been there 3 weeks.
But the day before she was due to fly down, her son was discharged from the clinic.
They just said, I'm sorry, we've driven him to a train station. Oh, I remember screaming down the phone. And my husband was home at that time from work And he was so distraught. And we thought, driven to a train station, he's got nothing, he's got no money. I think they give them $20. What sort of duty is care is that?
I'm appalled by that. I think that as service providers, we have a duty of care to often is what a very vulnerable population who are often experiencing one of the most difficult circumstances in their life. Even if the person isn't meeting program rules and requirements, we still have a duty of care that when they discharge, we need to be wrapping services around them to ensure their safety.
So sending someone to the train station and saying, can't help you anymore, is risky?
Without a doubt, without a doubt.
The Hayter Clinic says it only notifies the families of adult clients if the client consents, but that in this case, police were advised.
Any client who broke a contract and was discharged was literally put on a train. Were the families informed every time? Absolutely not.
Joanna McDougall says she raised concerns about the treatment of clients before she was sacked by the Hayter Clinic in December 2011. She won a case for unfair dismissal and is now suing for unpaid wages and benefits.
The parent was usually the last to know that their child had left. They often didn't know where their child had gone to. They never got their deposits back. Raymond Hayter just went on to the next family.
It took 2 years for Brenda to get her son into the private hospital system for more treatment, while trying to get some of her money back from the Hayter Clinic.
It went on for 2 months in letters backwards and forwards, but at the end of the day, they refused to have a meeting. So then I would have had to file in a court if I wanted to try and get money back. But as I said, it was quite traumatic, and you can only do so much, and just had to let it go because it was causing so much distress.
And it would have been hugely expensive.
Hugely expensive. That $30,000 was gone,
Now, while Brenda didn't take her case to court, other families have. There have been 16 civil claims lodged against the Hayter Clinic, many from families demanding their money back after their children left the facility. Now, in one case from 2013, a young man attempted suicide after he was removed from the facility for aggressive behaviour. Now, the clinic says it notified the family that he'd been discharged to a psychiatric hospital for assessment. But the family says they never knew he'd even left the clinic until after he was found lying semi-conscious on the street by a passerby. The Hayter Clinic declined numerous requests for an interview. In a statement, the clinic made clear that it does not provide refunds, but the clients who leave early can return and finish their treatment. Last year, the National ICE Task Force called for Australia-wide standards for specialist drug treatment, but it hasn't happened yet. And it's not clear that it would even cover private clinics.
So we don't have any national standards, no, and there's no underlying model of care that people sign up to nationally. But within that vacuum of not having a nationally consistent set of standards, it's very hard for the public to know which services are actually providing, the latest evidence-based treatment by staff who are competent to actually provide that service, and which services are not. And so that's a big, huge issue for the general public.
2 weeks into Tiani's rehab, it's visiting day. Wayne and Renee have brought flowers and fish and chips. Tiani is sticking it out, but it hasn't been easy. She nearly walked out in the first few days after skipping her medication.
Take them tablets, yeah?
Yeah, I only missed it once. I'm not going to miss it again.
You feel yuck when you missed it? It makes you angry.
Yeah. Very angry.
Here's socks and what else?
Socks.
Socks.
Jumper. Zip.
Rehab is a gamble. Odds are Tiani may need another stint to get clean. That would cost more money that this family doesn't have.
I love you.
Love you too.
I miss you.
Miss you.
I'll get angry. All right?
Yeah.
They're a captive market to an industry built on the knowledge that there are thousands more families just like them who'll do whatever it takes to save their child's life.
Bye.
The Federal Health Department is currently considering national standards for government-funded rehab clinics, but there are still no plans to regulate private clinics. Next week, the town with one of the worst crime rates in Australia and the bold experiment to turn it around. See you then. If the material covered in this story has raised any issues of concern for you, you can contact one of these services.